So I understand there've been some chairs thrown around in my mama's home state. What's going on in Alabama, Professor Hunter? I'm not trying. They throwing chairs in Alabama. What the?
I feel like, it's not about the chairs. It was a moment that probably in Black August will be remembered among all of the other moments in Black August that tie us together. And in many ways, I think this is going to have a lasting effect, what we all witnessed. Dr. Black came on my show this week, actually Thursday, and he said, no, it wasn't. It was Tyler Merritt who said at first when the video popped up, he thought he was going to see another tragedy. And he was getting himself prepared to see a Black man beaten, maybe beaten to death, because that's what it was looking like was happening. Another one of these videos where a Black person is being assaulted and then something different happened. So, I know you were on Roland, and I'm sure you've talked about it. And I don't know if has it made its way to Egypt? Because I know it's made its way to some fashion show. Somebody had a chair.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's like,
Roland is fascinated by these videos. He is having a ball. I get it. I do get it. So yeah, this is the thing though, Prof, that I think that is essential. If we're talking about this from an Africana studies framework, and let me not even say studies, because we've jailbroken the university. If we're talking about this, because academic departments, this all been washed away. We're not doing that here. We're not doing that. But in terms of this Africana framework that we're using, if we're talking about from that framework, this is very much a social structure, governance structure clash moment. But I tell you, it isn't. Put it this way: on the boat that you saw when you showed the clip, that boat was being navigated by Nubians. The Nubians got the boat industry on lock in Afghan. The only way you get off that island to the mainland, go to the bazaar, go to the shops, and it's a bunch of us over there right now while I'm doing in class. A lot of them over there getting last minute things. The only way you get there is the boat. The ferries run 24 hours a day. Now, Montgomery, Alabama, of course, very important city for our people. That was one boat. These boats by the dozens. If I open this window, we could go out there and look. These boats are constantly going, and they got tires on the side because they bumping into each other. But these are masters. And of course, in the Nile, they swimming in the Nile. All these children, sometimes school's out. They swimming up next to the boats. They pass the boats. They singing in about 5 different languages, trying to get a couple of dollars here and there. They on surfboards. Some of them just swimming in and out. So it's a lot of human beings in the boats. What is not there is conflict. So these boats coming up against each other, they got tires, because sometimes we have 6 boats. So the boats come to the restaurant, one boat pull up, you ain't got time to let them off another boat. They can line the boats up side by side and create a walkway literally from the 6th boat to the 1st boat, and people can walk through, and they do it without even thinking. They know them got no shoes on, they wearing galabias like I got on. Is that they laugh and they talk and they look like your uncle. It's everybody. I seen somebody look so much like my nephew when he was here. I had to take a picture of this boy because he looked just like, these Nubian boys look just like Ellington. So we come in, and I said all that to say this. What ain't happening is move your boat, and then somebody don't move their boat, and they fight them. Next thing you know, it's a cheer. See, this is a different thing. In fact, do you know what the crime rate is here in Aswan among the Nubians? 0.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it really boils down to people being used to telling people what to do, and then to have a Black figure tell you what to do, a captain, a co-captain of the Harriet, whose authority supersedes your whiteness, and you don't like it. Because who is this Black man telling me what to do? And for those, if you don't think it's racial, it's deeply embedded racism. It's that racism that is part of the fabric of America, right? So everybody should know their place. Your place as a Black person is to be subservient to me. So I'm comfortable with you if you are taking care of my children, because we're used to that. We're used to you suckling our children. We're used to you raising our children, but you don't have any authority in the house, right? Which is why your children don't behave. We're used to you wiping our grandparents' asses and taking care of our elderly, right? Because we're definitely not going to do that. So we're used to that. We're used to you, cutting our grass and cleaning our homes. And even in the office place, we're used to you in these roles. And some of you have made it to some higher ups, but you're not going to tell us what to do. This man had ultimate authority, right? I mean, he was in charge of the docks, and he was in charge of the Harriet, and he was like, you're not supposed to be here. And he spent 40 minutes 40 minutes, Dr. Carr, cajoling them to do the thing that was legally what they were supposed to do, which was to move their damn boat.
Right.
They didn't like it. So you're going to put your hands on somebody. Now,
right, of course.
I'm not going to get into the alcohol and all of that. That might be, but you know, you got some good damn sense. You don't just start wailing on somebody because you don't like that they told you to move the boat. And I know he did it with respect because he's been a co-captain of the Harriet. He wasn't just some dock worker, right? But it just speaks to this country. And I said, maybe we need to normalize people of all hues being in a position of authority, because it's clear to me that for 200 years, there's this notion that somehow you should step off the curb when we're walking. My space is more valuable than yours. So if I'm in a space, you have to move. I was in the sauna this morning. I was sharing with you. I come in, you know, this man is spread out and there's several people in there. And yeah, I don't even have to tell you what the man looked like. So I'm like, okay, there needs to be some room made here because, you know, I'm very vocal. And he's like, well, there's room. I'm not sitting next to your feet. So you're going to get up. I'm not sitting under your feet. I'm not sitting next to your feet. You know, you're going to try to figure out how to be a human being in this moment and have some consideration because it's a crowded sauna. And I don't want to be that close to you. I don't know what you got.
Absolutely.
So, well, there's enough room. So he tried to get a little frothy.
Okay.
And then there was another sister that came in, and then he realized there could be a chair somewhere. You know, I don't know what's gonna go down, but he got his ass up. He not only moved, but then he was so uncomfortable with the confrontation that somebody had the audacity to tell him that, like, what you're doing is discourteous, that he actually stormed out, which I was more grateful. It's more room for everybody, and then I ain't got to deal with your attitude. But I feel like, you know, we have been so conditioned to shrink ourselves in spaces when wrong is happening. Nobody gets checked because, you know, we allow for the wrong to happen because there's consequences. We don't want anyone to be upset with us. Do you know what I'm saying? Because there's usually consequences, very bad consequences for Black people. And I just think of Emmett Till and others, right?
That's right.
But it feels like a new day. And maybe we should normalize, you know, again, you said this, you told us this, we're the grandparents of this earth. We're the grandparents. So maybe we should start to behave like the elders that we are. And when things are wrong, we should say something and not let, you know, people just do whatever they want so that they can learn how to, you know, live within the certain confines of being among other human beings, which clearly doesn't seem to be normal anymore. So,
no, I agree. Yeah. So I agree. I agree. And again, there are very few stories from the United States that have made it here. People are not checking the headlines. It is remarkable. And you know this, every time we travel places, it puts the United States in context. The social structure we live in is filthy with race, as we know, and there are racial issues here. I mean, there are other kind of issues here, but in terms of race, this ain't that. We don't even have them conversations. And when we did have them, because the chair, of course, came up in Montgomery and watching the memes and laughing and talking. It's very important. It's been very important for us to process that in a place where we are not reacting to whiteness, because a lot of that energy is, of course, because we live our lives in the United States of America too much as figments of the white imagination. And so, you know, Frantz Fanon is dealing with that. What happens when you're in a moment, in a place where you are oppressed, and violence becomes a way of not only building consciousness, but kind of purging yourself of that oppressed mentality. So it's a very important moment. I think it's intriguing that the chair has become symbolic of resistance, when in fact, the mayor of Montgomery, of course, we all know that we're counting the days until he has to put that Black man in jail, because white people are not going to let him make this into a moment of racial triumph. So Mayor Reed, Stephen Reed, who has a checkered history apparently, and talking about what's happening in Montgomery, at some point, you know, it's got to be a Black scalp added to the white scalps, because this can't just be about race, as we know. And we can expect that. That's why people are talking about bail funds and things like that, and making sure this brother is okay. And when Brother Pickett did what he did, we all know he was righteous in what he did. Now, I think what is interesting as well about this is the hope. The hope that this is a moment of solidarity, that this is a new day. And I would say not only is it not a new day, this is where we have to be serious. And we have to be serious about this. The catharsis is great. It's fun. We feel good. We forget that the only difference between what happened in Montgomery and what has been happening in Alabama and all over the United States, and particularly in the South, in terms of resistance to white supremacy, the only difference is that this one was caught on tape. How many asses have been whipped in the South by black people. In fact, we were laughing about it the other night. We were in session, and I said, you know, that's why half you Negroes in here from Detroit and Buffalo and LA and Oakland and Portland, Oregon and Chicago. That's how y'all ended up there. The legend in my family is that my mother's grandfather bit a white man's nose off, and that's how the Detroit branch of our family had to start. We have been, I don't like these narratives like we've had enough. We had enough since the first hands was put on us, and those are black hands.
Please, baby. So now it becomes really nefarious that the narrative around blackness has always kind of been this docile, getting off the curb. So who's controlling the narrative, Dr. Carr? Who is the one that is, you know, because if we're not mouth to ear because we have somehow forgotten community, which also I think is part of the plan of the projects and all the other things that have happened, right? Because now we don't have multi-generations living among one another as my mother and grandmother grew up in, as your mother and grandmother grew up in, and grandfather. You know, who's telling this narrative, right? And all of the black on black crime and all of the, you know, these things. I mean, even as you look at your group, because I get to see things and you get to see things because we're in community, right? So you're you're in Africa with 200 plus people. We're about to be in South Carolina with 200 plus people. Every place we go, you know, whether it's Foods Just Friday Live, which 300 plus people, the venue's like, I've never seen a crowd like this. Well, because now we're convening the crowd that is actually the norm. The exception is what they keep pushing. The exception is what they're pushing on us.
That's right.
They're forcing it. You know, they're force feeding us the exception, and then we accept it, which is why I say we got to check all of this. We got to check it all.
Right.
So
that's exactly right.
Talk about that. I mean, you know, you just, because I think we forget and then we parrot the narrative because, you know, we want to be the exceptional Negro, I guess.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we forget. Well, let me not say we forget. We have to be careful, right? Because we have to build the we.
Yes.
But this is something that's very important. There has never been a time when we haven't resisted. And I'm not talking about the big, and I'm loving the chat. I have pulled up the app, of course. People talking about Stono Rebellion, Nat Turner, all that's very true. But I'm talking about the intimacy of day to day. When you read the narratives of enslaved Africans, which cannot be relied upon as the full opinion of Black people. When you read the Works Progress Administration's narratives collected in the 1930s, when you read Ophelia Egypt Settle. Again, shout out to the sisters named Egypt, Ophelia Egypt Settle, Cleopatra Davenport Thompson out of Mississippi with the Mississippi educators. I'm just thinking about the impact of Egypt, Mississippi. But when you read the transcripts of the narratives of African people, that last generation who suffered enslavement in the United States, and they're talking in the 1930s, these people, you see, I mean, when you read John Blasingham's book, Slave Testimony, when you read the book Bullwhip Days, when you look at the WPA narratives, George Warwick, the American Slave, these volumes broken down by state, you will see moment after moment of resistance. You know, women called upon to fan old white women in their beds and as they draw their last breaths and making them comfortable. And as soon as everybody's out, they take that fan and beat the hell out of that woman's face for all the years they had to suffer. The people that spit in the food, the people that grind up the glass in the food. This chair is part of an unbroken genealogy of resistance, of governance resistance, of maroonage. And white people absolutely knew who they could mess with and who they couldn't. Charlie Cobb's brilliant book. Charlie Cobb's book, we talked about many times. My friend Charlie Cobb's brilliant book. That nonviolent stuff will get you killed. My man, Baba A.K., Akinyele Umoja's book, We Will Shoot Back. In fact, we were laughing about it the other night. I'm sitting there with these brothers. One brother who actually is from Montgomery, brother who lives in Montgomery today. We're talking about this in the politics of the mayor's office, the politics of Black people in Montgomery, what they think will and won't happen. Another brother from North Carolina who lives in North Carolina, another brother from New Orleans. We're sitting around. These are Black men, by the way. What a beautiful thing to be at dinner with a bunch of brothers talking about what it means to be a grandfather of teenage boys, what it means to be an uncle, what it means to be a father. I mean, talking about what it means to be a son. These are Black men sitting in the Nile Valley, eating mangoes and drinking carcadec or sorrel, as the Caribbean folk will call it, or hibiscus tea. Some of them got Dr. Amon's tea with them, you know, all through the Nile Valley, sitting around talking about this. And we talk about this in this context. This whole notion that we didn't resist is absurd. We've been resisting. And we talked about what it means in a moment like this to think about the nature of how white people have dealt with Black resistance. In the South, you don't know how they deal with Black resistance. It ain't what you see in the movies. Yeah, that's in the dimension of it. They get the posse and the Klan gang and they scaring people. But here's another dimension of it. Read Charlie Cobb's book. Charlie Cobb said there's a brother, we laughed about it. There's a brother who came in to the courtroom, had his gun, and the judge is like, you got to take that gun out of here. And the brother said, I'll take my gun out when I'll take my gun out when he takes his gun out, pointing at the sheriff. What did the judge do? The judge told the sheriff, take your gun off. And the sheriff took his gun off, and the brother took his gun off, put them on the table, and they continued business. The point is this: these white boys knew who they could mess with not. And then the brother told the story we were talking, and he said, yeah, that reminds me of that story in that book where the white boy said, it ain't but two people in this county I'm afraid of. One is the sheriff, this is a white man, and the other is, and he named the brother in Mississippi. Everybody had the strap. I'll never forget an elder telling me one time, we were talking about Mississippi Valley, the HBCU, and it had been in Mississippi, where Jerry Rice went to school. And the best quarterback to ever throw to him, the great Willie Satellite Totten. Some of y'all know about HBCU football. But the point is, forget Joe Montana. But we were talking, and the elder was like, yeah, when our kids would leave Valley and coming home, wherever little town they were from, Mississippi, we knew where they were the whole time. And we knew the white boys wouldn't mess with them. Why? Because we had guns at every stage between Itabena and where they from. And when they would pull up in the driveway or they would get off the bus, they weren't going to be harmed. Why? Because Black people had the strap. Now, you watch the documentaries and you hear the yeah, you think we sitting there all waiting to get ass whippings. Oh, no. We gave them out, and some of them were exquisite. People got slapped. You had to get off the sidewalk. Really? You told Big Charles to get off the sidewalk? No, we just pretended Big Charles didn't exist. See, this is how the narrative of the social structure works. When you can't defeat it, you pretend it doesn't exist. We had that conversation the other night too, because all these cats is watching in class. Many of them are in narrative in Nubia, and to be in the Nile Valley where we are talking about violence, state violence. We're talking about Black on Black state violence. I told you, we were at Abu Simbel. We were at Abu Simbel the other day, maybe 15, 20 miles from the Sudan border, looking at the temple that Ramses II, who was the pharaoh in Kemet for 67 years, who built more temples than everywhere and statues and all that. The temple at Abu Simbel is one of 4 temples dedicated to different Neteru. You know, this is the one with Amun-Ra, and you got Ra-Horakti, you got Ptah, you've got the divine expression that Ramses saw of himself. I won't even get into the architecture of that. We'll talk about that another day. But the point is this: Kemet in that New Kingdom period expanded. We're talking about 3,500 years ago. But they expanded so broadly that in some ways they invited the kind of disruption of the society. It's a metaphor for what happens in the United States or any empire. Once you go beyond your borders with violence and you choose violence, you can invite into your country dissension and tension. Well, what we're seeing at this moment in U.S. history is not only predictable, it's the only thing that happens to empires. And so these brothers having a conversation about violence in Montgomery in the context of how violence has been used in the Nile Valley in antiquity and how it led to dissension. That 19th dynasty is the dynasty of Ramses. The 19th dynasty follows the 18th dynasty, which is also a dynasty of expansion, but it's a different kind of rhythm in some ways. Amenhotep III and T. Akhenaten, who has his own very interesting ideas about ways of knowing and governance. His son, Tutankhamun, and then following him, the military buildup that comes after that. Is Tutankhamun killed? Probably. He's killed, but there's a military, almost like a slow-moving military, quick-moving military coup in the 18th dynasty. After King Tut, so to speak, King Tut, doesn't make any sense, Tutankhamun, comes A-Y, Horemheb, who comes after him. These pharaohs are military guys. And then you empty into the 19th dynasty, Ramses I, military man. Seti I, who comes after him, who is a military guy. Seti I's son, Ramses II. Now, they are also deeply Kemetic, which means they've got the ways of knowing, they understand the use of Ma'at. In fact, I found a fascinating book on Seti I and Ma'at. I won't even pull it. I got to talk about a Booties. Remind me, a Booties bookstore in Luxor. I got a chance to spend time with the grandson of the founder, who is a whole nother fascinating story. These bookstores in Egypt are very important. And I should add here, I hope that I will be, I'm sure he's supposed to be coming tonight, the owner of Obelisk Bookstore, the unfinished obelisk of Hatshepsut, which is one of the sites we visited, Baba Iman. Baba Imam, he wasn't there. He was in Cairo. His daughter is getting engaged, and so he was out of town. But he heard from his man who was there. We bought so many books at the Obelisk bookstore, at the Unfinished Obelisk, that it made the tour late by like 2 hours because the dude only had one cash register, and we bought so many books out of it. Seeing all these black people packed in there. By the way, Sister Freedom Cartwright, you know her, Professor Hunter, of course, Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise, Nubian teacher, Martha's Vineyard. She bought so many books.
Wait, she's there too?
Yeah, Freedom is here, no question. Freedom is here. So these sisters, and I loved it. These Freedom and these other sisters, about maybe a half dozen of them, these are black women standing in the back of this bookstore in the children's section, cleaning out the section on ancient Egypt, getting ready for back to school. And so Freedom standing with this pile of books, and she said, I got to bring all these books back to set up my corner, my reading corner for this this coming school year, because school has already started in Atlanta and some other places. School is starting shortly. But the reason I bring it up in this context, I'm just putting it as a footnote, is I say, okay, hold on, let me take your picture. Why? Because I'm gonna take this picture and send it to you so you can put it in the room with the books, so that as you tell the children where these books coming from, they can see you standing in the place where you bought the books. Because some child's gonna never be satisfied in her life until she gets to Kemet to stand in this bookstore. I mean, this is what we're doing. We're building. Look, DeSantis, Florida, AP, class, college board, all that is very nice. And as you talk about that, have these curriculum boards, you arguing on platforms and you're talking. Because the black women gathered in the back of an Egyptian bookstore owned by a Nubian bought out the bar of took books to bring back. So while you arguing over a line in a curriculum that nobody reads, and we laughed about that too, we're over here with teachers who are deliberating on what the best materials are to take back to the classrooms that you will never visit. So while all my friends write think pieces in the New York Times and get on MSNBC and argue about language and who got excluded and who got included, the real educators are actually building educational formations and a governance formation. Now, back to the footnote, as I was saying, we're talking about this context. These brothers talking about this violence in Montgomery. In the context of Egyptian violence, because we're not romanticizing. We can't romanticize it anyway, because that would evoke Rome. We're not romanticizing Kemetic history. We're here to study, to learn from the mistakes. You don't build a pyramid perfectly the first time. We stand in front of pyramids. We're looking at failure. That's what we're studying. We're not just studying achievement, we're studying failure. Because in order to do that right, you must have done it wrong so many times that you've eliminated the ways to do it wrong. This is the genius, and this is why time is required to do the deeper work. So as we're having this conversation, these brothers, including the brother who lives in Montgomery, expresses his concern. In this catharsis moment, in all this evocation and these memes, ultimately, as we have seen this moment of triumph, how can we use this to do two things? Number one, connect to all the moments of triumph we have had, because we've always resisted. That's important. And which means we have to change the narrative. That's what we're doing. In the words of Black Thought, it's imperative we change the narrative. But also, more importantly, in some ways, well, I want to say more importantly, because this is the path to get to that. We have to then continue to construct a we that does not rely on responses to white violence for our existence. Because the thing that I find disturbing about this moment is that in this celebration of us, that I love us and this is what we do, we need to hear more conversation about who that we is. Because so many of us, this is the F around and find out moment. The whole idea of Black violence and resistance, righteous indignation and resistance is very important. But you don't build a pyramid that way. You don't sustain a society over 3,000 years that way. The violence is necessary at moments, but what the Egyptians discovered was, to their chagrin, because after Ramses had dozens of sons, dozens of children, sons and daughters. But by the end of the Ramesseid period, which is really the 20th dynasty after Ramses II is gone, then you see Ramses III. Ramses III, the seeds for the destruction of that Ramesseid period in Kemet are born in fact, there's a book by Redford on what's called the Harem Conspiracy. Ramses II, who ruled for 67 years, his son Ramses III, they plotted to overthrow him and replace him with one of his sons. Who plotted to overthrow him? His wife, many of the junior wives who were in the palace, officials in his government, and ultimately he's able to sniff this out. There's prosecution. Some people are put to death. There's all kind of things. But the bottom line is this: the instability that was laid in the empire era of Ramses, for all of its brilliance, is followed by periods where the people in the Nile Valley increasingly began to ignore the pharaoh, ignore the federal government, ignore the central government. And by the end of the 20th dynasty, which is like Ramses the 11th, Kemet is now entering a period where invaders will be able to invade the Nile Valley and create instability, that third intermediate period. And it requires the Nubians to come from where we are, actually farther south from this. And this is Pianki, this is Shabaka, this is Taharka, who are in the Sudan, Nubia, to come back down that Nile and restore order in the 25th dynasty. Now we're talking about, roughly speaking, maybe 2,700 years ago. We're going to the Nubian Museum to see Shabaka, Pianki, and Taharka and talk about that. But I'm bringing all this up in this context. Let's come to the United States of America. The United States of America is a criminal enterprise, and it's a settler colony. And unlike Egypt, it was not built on respecting people's rights. It was not built on respecting people's cultures. See, what sustained ancient Egypt it was a federation of nomes. Seped is the word in Medu states, we would call today. But each of those regions were anchored in the culture and ways of knowing and meaning making and movement and memory of the people who lived there, the indigenous people. And so when you knit all that together over centuries, as they did beginning in, roughly speaking, the 4th millennium BCE, you begin to say, okay, this is going to be the central administration, but everybody gets to keep who they are, and you pour into a great civic project that is anchored around agriculture. And when you can't farm, we put you to work on civic projects, pyramids, tombs, temples. You develop your skills. We went to a place that is so beautiful to me. It's called Set Ma'at. The Arabs call it Dira Medina. This is a town that consisted of nothing but the people who built the temples, who built and carved the tombs, who painted the Meta-Nature. These are the people, the regular working people. We went into 2 beautiful tombs dedicated to supervisors in that region of Set Ma'at. And you stand there with the wind blowing early in the morning. You see the little houses the people had where they had their names and their occupations, all working on these tombs, all put together. They worked for the state. They were honored in the state. Those who read and write, those are scholars, those who are skilled work people, and they are in this state. Women in ancient Egypt had the rights men had: own property, sue, make contracts. Susan B. Anthony, I know that you're important in the United States of America, but you stay your scrawny behind in the social structure and get away from us. You have nothing to teach us except about how racist white people can be. Malikia walked through that the other day. We don't need any lessons on gender from you. We need no lessons on women's rights from you. Your Western society has nothing to teach us except how to make mistakes if we listen to what y'all say as our point of departure. We are sitting in a place where this was not the priority. I'm saying I'll just say this: compared to the United States of America, what happened in Montgomery, Alabama is just, again, reinforcing the fact that this is not a nation called the United States, not a nation. Kemet was a nation in part because it had a common culture, but it also had a way of embracing people's cultures as part of a common culture, but also as distinct. This is very important. You can't understand the way that the people of Kemet thought about what they call netchers, whether it be Amun-Ra, whether it be Kunun, whether it be Sekhmet, whether it be any of those names. You can't understand it if you look at them as religious expressions only. These are also political expressions of the way people thought about themselves in relation to where they were from. So if you come to the United States of America, there's also this fierce state-level nationalism. As your friend, brother who, I admire, respect a lot, and, chop it up with him those few times I got a chance to speak with him, graduate of Florida A&M. I don't hold that against him as a Tennessee State Tiger, but as Roy Wood Jr. said in his latest special, Black folk ain't talking about America. They talk about the places in America where Black people can have fun. So when he said, I explained James Brown living in America, he's going to name the cities, right? And then when you hear California Love, you're going to hear Tupac and Dre name the cities. Everybody shout out their cities. They ain't talking about the United States of America. But what this moment shows us is that Black folk in the United States have a governance sensibility. That's the effort to find out. We're going to take your, try that in a small town and apply it to this. That's the billion different memes and videos and soundtracks. All of that's coming from a governance sensibility, but it is not a mature governance way of moving through the world. And the gap between a sensibility and putting that sensibility into action can only be filled by time, significant study, and organizing come out of deliberate dialogue. So we're halfway around the world, not because we're just doing some interesting history study. This is the failure of my colleagues and friends who think that somehow we're romanticizing things. You have to turn the volume down now. And perhaps come with us sometime. But what you're not going to do is dictate what we're doing because you don't have any idea. I know you love your master and they give you some degrees and give you a little award here and there. It's very important. And I feel sorry for you. But you know, there's always redemption. You can always come home. What this is an attempt to understand what it takes to build a we. Kemet is a valuable lesson. If Kemet had been unbroken till today, maybe it's China. Maybe not, because even there's a different sensibility. The accidental, and by accidental, I mean not an accidental, the incidental impact of Kemet, in other words, the power of Kemet is so powerful that when we do this, we had people, his young brother who graduated from Clark Atlanta University, he's standing in the Egyptian Museum. He's like, whoa, when you see Wasir like this and you see Akhenaten like this, you say, okay, you understand Wakanda forever. You know where they came from, right? Yeah, we know that Bast in the comic books comes from the Egyptians. They write that in the comic book. But now you see that that's just the residue of Kemet. The architecture, everything. We talked about the idea of Egypt. We talked about it a little bit last time, and I'm not going to do it again today, but I want to mention this in the context of what's going on in Montgomery. The governance sensibility is essential. You can't get anywhere without it. This is the catharsis of making these videos and laughing and saying, yeah, y'all mess around. But you then have to have that continue to spark a deepening of a we that can be converted to political power. If we're going to make all these chair videos and not be registered to vote, if we're going to make all these chair videos and not understand that there are enough Black people in Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, Louisiana, North and South Carolina, Tennessee, Florida, to literally restructure the governments of all them little towns, all the cities for sure, and with enough muscle and organization, transform the state political apparatus, then I don't want to see no chair videos, because what it does is reinforce in my mind the idea that the American Negro is conceptually murked. We are trapped. We are trapped. You're going to make a chair video and then tomorrow not know who your congressperson is. You're going to make a chair video and tomorrow rail against a system and somebody asks you, what have you done to organize? You say, I don't know, but I did stay up all night making this crazy TikTok video about this chair. What that does is ultimately has a diminishing effect on our sense of self-value. Yes, and then we also pass off the responsibility that we have as individuals to build that we on heroic individuals like Aquaman. You know, Mike Harriet, his wife, her sisters are here. We had a long conversation. We know that Black AF history is coming out. We're excited about that. We talking about that. Where are we talking about it? We ain't talking about it in New York or South Carolina. We talking about it on the boat on the way over to the mainland. And then what does it mean to talk about ourselves not as a minority, not as a reactive group, but to ask ourselves, as we're watching what happened in Montgomery, what we are watching, and tied to something other than responding to whiteness. Why are they videoing that, Prof, in the first place? In other words, Black people know when something about to pop off. That video didn't start with the fight. They are on that boat.
That's right.
Watching it.
Yes.
Looking. Come on now. Come on, Prof.
Yes.
We have to be serious now. Let's be serious. It's all fun and games, but let's be serious. Black people, keep our heads on a swivel. Do you know what it means to be in a moment, in a place where you don't have to have your head on a swivel? This young boy who was with us, young brother, preschooler, brilliant young brother. His name is Sankara. He's named for Thomas Sankara. Sankara been with us every step of the way. He's on my bus. He's been asking so many questions.
4 years old. He's 4 years old, Dr. Carr.
Yes, ma'am.
You said brilliant young brother. He's 4.
4. Asking Abdul so many questions. Finally, Abdul, you the guy, brother. But it's not a joke. This young boy, he asked Larry Crow the other night, how do people become gods? Because he's been spending his time looking at all these texts on the wall, all the meta-nature. We talking about how do people become God? You know what Crow told him? It was profound. The question was profound. Oh, the question was found. Crow said, it takes time. When you have time, because the ancient Egyptians did not live in a society of scarcity. See, the societies of Europe are societies of scarcity. So the cultures are worthless when it comes to thinking about abundance. Everything from the fairy tales to tell you to be scared of old folks and stay out the woods, and from the plotting nursery rhymes like, kill the king, for all of that stuff, from the you can't do nothing as a woman, depend on a man, Snow White, Cinderella. The point is this: all of the culture of Europe is built on scarcity because you're living in a place where starvation is a possibility. When you're in the Nile Valley, this is what you got to do. The Nile floods, you throw the seeds out, it grows, you harvest it, and then in the 4 months where you can't do anything, you work on the common projects, which is the pyramids, tombs, and temples, and the state gives you a wage and you develop your skills. Then the Nile floods, you throw out the seeds, you bust your ass to harvest, and then now this receded. What do you do now? You go back to work on the pyramids. They didn't work on the pyramids 12 months a year. They worked on it 3 months a year. No, 4 months a year. 3 seasons. 12 months. 10 days a week. 3 weeks. 360 days. And then the calendar was set up so that those 5 days at the end become festival days. And after you've gone through that cycle enough to have 360 days, you have a leap year. Stop playing with the Africans. Do you understand the time it takes to understand that that's how the moon and the sun go through the phases and the earth rotates around the sun? You have to do that several times just to figure out that that's the rhythm. In other words, patience and time. Carr said, how did we become gods? To Larry, after he made his presentation, he said, it takes time. When you live in a place of abundance, you have time to think. And when you have time to think, you have time to create. And what we're seeing in Kemet is a fraction of what they created. With time, your belly is full. Your family is secure. You can sit and look at the stars and say, them 3 stars, okay, them stars over in the north corner, those stars don't move. They're circumpolar stars. This is very, what? Wait, well, I'm gonna be dead, but my great-great-great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter will see that come around again. You see, okay, let's do something. We should line up something down here to mark this. Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, the 3 pyramids, and the Hor-em-Akhet, horse of the horizon, known as the Sphinx, are lined up with those stars. What they call the imperishable stars. This is the season of Sothis, what the Greeks call Sothis, Sirius, Sopet, the dog star. They call it dog days for a reason. But the Romans are listening to an echo. The Africans observe that. Why do I say all that? When you have time, you are developing your creative intelligence to a degree, your human potential to a degree that future generations will look at you as almost impossible. That's how Imhotep, who designed the step pyramid, became a god. The young boy asked a question, the elder answered the question. A god is a concept. It takes time, and it takes the ability to have time to think. When you have time to think, you can do that. I'm going to tell you what's not time to think. Reaction time. White boys kicking you in the gut. You sweat, you throw your hat up in the air, you fight. Now here come somebody swimming. Here come all the brothers going to beat somebody's ass. Here come the sister to say, I know y'all don't want to put your hands on a white girl, but I'll be very happy to do it. Here comes the cat with the chair. You know what all that is? That's reaction time, not time to think. Because guess what? The Montgomery bus boycott was reaction too. But the reaction was developed with time to think. What do we need? Well, we got segregation. We need taxis, black taxi service. All them people wasn't walking to work. Well, what else we need? We need time to develop ways of knowing. Okay, now you got churches. Why? So they could have meetings at the churches because white people didn't own the buildings. But how did they stay off the buses for a year? Because they had institutions that were developed behind the Cotton Curtain during Jim and Jane Crow, where they had time to think. And when people have time to think, they build institutions. The bus boycott couldn't happen today. Why? What institutions do we have that could sustain a boycott? I ain't talking about rich Negroes. I ain't talking about 15 Negroes who got $50 million a piece and will donate money. No. What you gonna do? What institution you got? We got to rebuild our institutions. And it doesn't start with going just to the 19th century, just to the 1950s and 60s or 70s. It starts with going to the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, BCE, and tying that, as Ayanelli did the other day when we were standing, in fact, today at the Tunes and Knowles, and they were talking about family and how, last night, talking about descent through the mother's line. And she compared her upbringing in Nigeria to what the Egyptians were doing 3,500 years before that. And we started thinking about comparative family. When Baba Abdul said, when a Nubian gets sick and goes to the hospital, the doctors hate it. Why, Professor Hunter, do you think the doctors hate when a Nubian person is admitted to a hospital overnight? Because when that person goes in the hospital, who comes to visit them?
The whole family.
As the Roots would say, everybody. In other words, they hate when the Nubians get sick. Because black folk, I know you only let 2 visitors, but my auntie came down from Detroit. Yes. And they hate when the Nubians get sick because all the Nubians come to the hospital, just like all the Nubians came out the village and took Dr. Ben people off that bus, which is why we have to go to the village every year. We don't let any of us go down. Oh, they fighting that dude over there. Let's all go beat that ass. But that's a reaction. It reveals the potentiality of a we. It reveals the governance sensibility. But if we only then pour that into having joy and a catharsis in the moment, we have not regained the momentum of memory. Even in a city where we use our institutions to combat white supremacy, we do not exist to combat white supremacy. All my friends who do anti-racist work, and I ain't trying to say the soul of America doesn't have a soul. It's not a country. What I'm trying to do is not reveal. That's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is help us. Well, no, remind for sure. Again, one of my favorite shirts in the broad and growing family of Nubia gear is Nubia, the renewed normal. It's not the new, no, this is a reminder. This is a reminder. When we think about, and again, we're winding up now. We got a few more days. Like I said, most people are probably over hanging with the Nubia. First time I came here in '96, they came looking for me because I had gone over on the boat and I'm in the bazaar and I'm sitting in the back in one of the stalls with the brothers. They done poured me hot tea because that's what they do. You know, they don't drink cool drinks. They drink hot drinks because, you know, it helps to regulate the temperature of the body. Hold on, let me make sure my computer doesn't go down here. And so, you know, I'm drinking hibiscus tea and I'm drinking hot mint tea. And they saying, now you gonna have stomach problems. No, they boiled that tea. And if I do, I do. But we were in there talking about George Bush and here, right? It was hilarious. We were having this conversation. But my point is this. They're over there building community right now. But when we think about this, the 2 things come to mind. In that language that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, in that Florida curriculum that nobody's going to use. Come on, y'all. All the teachers here, we've been laughing about this stuff. When we get together, it's just really something. But in it, the whole people battling over this language, Black people use these for develop their skills. And we talked about that. I would encourage folks to go back and look at that conversation. What I was saying the other night as I was talking was, what it reveals is people said, Black people, slavery helped them develop skills. No, it didn't. Slavery, and then they started going, Black people brought skills with them. Oh, really? Okay, so I'm saying keep going, momentum, because that indignity is revealing the fact that you are not an American. I don't mean that you don't live in the United States, that you don't have a passport. I don't mean any of that. What I mean is you don't have a sensibility to these people's sensibility. And then it pissed you off to the point where you are willing to say out loud something that you wouldn't even admit to yourself, which is what you have no investment in this. Oh, you telling me that we had skills? Slavery wasn't y'all, and we had skills when we came here. Oh, so now you finally gonna get close to the breakthrough wall you need to get through. Because George Washington is not your dad. And I know you love John Quincy Adams and talking about researching about Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson, but you spend $1,000 to go see Hamilton, but they done pissed you off to the point where you're almost ready to break through that funky social structure wall and recover the momentum of your memory. And remember that you never stopped exercising your ways of knowing or cultural meaning making. We riding through the desert, Professor Hunter, yesterday on the way back. On the way back, and my man Stacy from Texas has a speaker on the bus, and it goes throughout the whole bus. And Abdul has been converted to Black American music. So we riding through. Every time he finished, he said music, and they put on the music. Stacy done played James Brown. He done played George Clinton, Gil Scott-Heron, and he puts on, as we riding through the desert, the hot ass desert coming back from Abu Simbel. Summer breeze makes me feel fine. Yeah, the Isley Brothers version. So we were Summer Breeze. You know what I'm saying? This is the genius. Gil Scott-Heron, 95 South, all of the places we've been. Yeah, the chair is cool. The chair got you fired up. You made some memes, but guess what? I saw a sister say, "Dear Nat Turner," wait a minute, no, don't call Nat Turner's name because Nat Turner had more than a chair. Will the Executioner had an axe. And be very clear that if you're gonna fight these people, you have to fight these people. A meme ain't gonna do it, a TikTok ain't gonna do it. And guess what? Even if you win that fight, that's when the fight starts because fighting ain't the center of human identity.
Come on.
You gotta build something. You don't build a pyramid by swinging chairs. You can't even build a pyramid by stacking chairs. You build a pyramid by after you've eaten. You look at the stars for 1,000 years. You stack some rocks. You make some mistakes. And 1,000 years after that, you build something that has been here for damn near 5,000 years and is still standing when many skyscrapers going to be gone. It takes time to become God. It takes time to develop that God out of you. And you can't get there by reacting. Reacting is get you at a moment. But if all you're doing is reacting, guess what? The brawl in Montgomery, you know who's going to make the money out of it? Maybe a fashion house in Europe as a black lady walks down swinging a chair. But I don't know who owned that fashion walkway, who's going to make the money. When the chairs start to show up and the chair line shows up in Macy's or Versace, or they introduce a chair down the catwalk in Fashion Week in New York or Paris, that's when you find out that that's where this ends up if you ain't built nothing. And you'll celebrate it if you don't know better.
And let the church say, Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Ra. Yes.
Amen.
Yes. I don't even want to say any. I just need us to just sit with that. The maturity that you talk about, you know, the catharsis that leads to nothing but good feelings. And then you right back to where you were because you have to go, yeah, oh, I love this. I'm going to go back and watch this probably several dozen times because that last little bit, man. Listen, you got me taking notes. I got notes here, and because it's all we do in Nubia is build, right? I see Michael Harriet's in the chat as well. You know,
my man Mike. Hey Mike, we're gonna make sure your sister-in-laws and your wife, we good. We are having a ball, bruh. We love you.
Yes. You know, but that's part of it too. You know, it's the gathering of those folk who have been dispersed, right? And out there, the Kierna Mayos who's doing her thing, and the Kevin Powells and the folk that, you know, have been in their silos. It's like bringing everybody in to the fold. Like, what can we build together? There's too many dynamic people and people without names. But when you talk about the time, though, all of these people put in time. And they may not be household names, but they have substance. And it's just, you don't build with bricks that don't have enough straw, right? Dr. Carr, I mean, the bricks have to be whole, which is what we talk about. The bricks have to be whole. It's not just about sitting for the 1,000 years and planning. But when you come to put a brick, the brick has to hold up over the next 5,000 years.
Let me mention this quickly. Don't go anywhere, just very quickly, because there's a lot of mud brick. We've seen a lot of mud brick. We were in the desert looking at one of the oldest pieces between here and Abu Simbel. Mud brick is very important, very functional. People still use mud brick in some ways, but the temples were not built of mud brick. That's how we know there weren't any Hebrews in the Nile Valley, but that's a story for another day. I won't scare nobody. Jeremiah Wright could walk out through that, but he would very happily, he would do. But granite.
Okay, I was going to say, what were they made of? Please break it down again. What?
Yeah, granite, limestone. These are the hard stone. We were at the quarry where Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut is a beast. When we were standing in Luxor at Waset, at Thebes at Waset, at her obelisks. One has fallen. They had an earthquake 1,000 years ago, but two of them are still there. These huge obelisks with Metanetcherin and Mary Carre, Hatshepsut, the pharaoh. By the way, don't say female pharaoh. Pro means the great house. It is not gendered. Angie Porter gave a brilliant discussion of that the other night about leadership. In fact, stop saying king and queen. Say ruler if you must say a word. Because again, gendering all this language becomes very problematic. But anyway, Hatshepsut ordered them to carve out of this granite here in Aswan. Aswan is the home of a lot of stuff. The sandstone here, which is kind of fragile, but also the granite, which is all over the Nile Valley. She says, you know, I want the biggest Tekken Metanetcher word for obelisk. The Washington Monument is not an obelisk. It's a bunch of bricks stacked up in the shape of an obelisk. An obelisk is cut out of a single piece of stone. Why do I raise this? As they are working on this, they have this huge obelisk that they are literally carving out with wood. They pour the wood, you know, they pour water on the wood, they expand the wood, it begins to crack open the stone so they can then work. Then they take the hard stone and they start pounding them in. They got it carved out, they got it smooth to the sides, they got the tip there, the point is going down. And then they notice and discover a crack in the middle of the stone. There's a crack there. An obelisk is made of a single piece of stone. What do they have to do? Let's start again. The site we went to where we bought all the books is a bookstore outside of something called the Unfinished Obelisk. What is the lesson of the Unfinished Obelisk? Can you imagine the day the workmen came in and kept going and then said, hey man, is that, oh shit, it's not. We've been on here 6 months, man. Is that a crack? Is that a crack? So you see the whole obelisk is like sitting there 2/3 of the way formed and you see the crack. And you see how the crack spread. So what do? You take a deep breath, release a few swear words, call your favorite netcher for help, take a nap, get up, get your tools, and start carving another obelisk. That's what you do. The point is this, though. It's not mud brick. You live in a mud brick house, but 3,000 years later, the ones you did finish are still standing. The lesson from the unfinished obelisk is when you make a mistake or when nature intervenes or when a crack in a stone is on the inside, it's not there till it vibrates and then you didn't realize, if you let that defeat you, you haven't learned the lesson of excellence, the lesson of potential. That's why I love how Pearl Clegg put it, one of your, fellow writers and well-known, the daughter of Albert Clegg, Shrine of the Black Madonna. Pearl Clegg said, when I'm writing, when it's time for me to stop for the day, I always write the next thing I'm going to start with. I don't stop at the end of the line. I then take the line. Why? Because I've set my marker down for the next day. When that obelisk broke, man, them cats was like, damn. All right, let's plan the next. Don't let that thing stop you that night because it just festers. It's just brilliant.
And they didn't try to cover it up.
No.
They didn't try to, because this society would have slapped some spackle on it.
No question.
Kept going and was like, well, somebody else, 100 years, maybe they'll discover it. We'll be gone. Like the commitment to excellence today.
That's right.
We don't have that. We don't
it's
show.
We have it. We have. You know what we have?
What do we have, Dr. Carr?
I'm saying what we have. We have Karen Hunter, whose father would not let her miss that corner of sweeping. In other words, what we don't have is we haven't noticed what we've kept. Because we all had parents who said, you did what? Let me come in here.
Yes,
boy,
yes.
That sheet is not, it's the unfinished. So we had it. We just got to remember.
Okay. Who's doing that, though? Who's doing the baseboards? Who's waking the kids up at 7 o'clock and o'clock? We come from the last generation of people that had their ass whooped for missing the dust in the corner.
Professor Hunter, did you not a month ago have a whole question about what was the work song in your house? It's still there.
Okay, I hope so. And if it's not, hello, y'all raising children, bring it back. I'm not minus the ass whooping, but there should be consequences and repercussions.
No question
for not wiping the chrome in the bathroom. I'm just saying with the paper towel to make sure it's sparkling, even if you're gonna brush your teeth an hour later. Because those are, you're so right. Our parents were genius.
Yes.
Because I'm like, I'm just gonna turn the water on again. Who cares about water spots? No. Paper towel, make sure it's spotless.
We
come back an hour later and put more water on it. Man.
It's the same. That attitude is the same way of knowing that built the pyramids. And the way we help our children understand it is we take them and stand them in front of the pyramid and tell them the story that you just told. And I told you, the greatest STEM curriculum in the world for African people is coming to keep Egypt and trying to figure out, how did y'all get this rock from 3,000 miles down here to this place? Because everywhere you go in the Nile Valley is some granite in the building, but the granite is down here. We are almost as far away from Cairo as you can get without being in the Sudan. And they still trying to figure out how these Negroes got all this heavy rock down the Nile River in perfection. It's the same story. It's the same sensibility that said, no, wipe that chrome. I know we're going to use, no. No, it isn't the destination. It's the practice.
The journey.
That's what it's the journey. It's the journey, Prof. This is the excellence.
And I'm borrowing that from an episode of Swagger. So I just want to
Ain't nobody mad.
give
You
credit to
footnote.
Rock to Mr. By the Wood. So
Yes.
Reggie Rock By the Wood. This has been, and again, I feel like I got to sit with this for another couple of hours, but this has been amazing.
Yes.
I'm seeing all of the transformation through what's being shared in Nubia.
Yes.
Throughout, there's a whole group there, but folk are sharing in all of the places that they are in Nubia
Yes.
on the app. And it's, I'm sitting there every day like, damn,
We're here. It ain't going nowhere. And
no, I know. And you just evoke something else. I'm like, what else can we do there? Oh my goodness.
So much.
Yeah.
In fact, let me mention. I did want to mention my man at a booty.
It will not be in class without some books too.
That's exactly right. I asked him. This is a booty. A booty was the first tour guide in the Nile Valley. A Booty Man of Luxor by L.J. Craven is his autobiography. A Booty's bookstore. There are a couple. One is in the shadow of Luxor Temple. And you know me, I mean, I'm ruthless. So we got everybody in. We're all situated. I wanted them especially to see Sachet, the carving of Sachet. We talk about hidden figures, Katherine Johnson, all them. This is the great grandmother of every mathematician. She is the sister whose figure, whose image represents everything that can be measured and counted. When you build a temple, when you build anything in Nile Valley, you see her on the walls with the architect, because the architect has to follow her. There's a device on the top of her head that has been interpreted as like a device that gives order to how the stars are arranged, that kind of measures the distance between the stars. It's an upside down cow horns, and then you see this star-shaped glyph on top of her head, Sachet. And she wears a leopard skin dress, by the way. Black women, y'all been wearing leopard skin for a long time. Then leopards are common to, I think, Turkey and Russia and England. Oh, wait, no, inner Africa. But the point is this. So after I got everybody situated, okay, we good? Okay, the guides are there. We done ran to the people. Okay, boom, I got to hit it across the street because we get back on the bus at an hour. And I got precision to get over to a Booty's, the bookstore. So, of course, I go out there and clean them out for anything that they've been published since 2019 because that's my job. And come back to the bus. And then, I rejoin. But I asked them, do you have a copy of the small book that's his biography? They said, well, they don't, but my cousin might have it. Where's your cousin? Your cousin across town in Luxor. Well, I know that a Booty's bookstore near the other location is near where the hotel is. So now I just make sure everybody's good with it. So I slip away after I figure out where it is and get around in the alley. And I'm sitting there with his grandson, a Booty's grandson, who continues to run the bookstore. And I also bought a copy of Egypt, a Booty's guidebook. This is the first guidebook written by a guide in Egypt. A Booty wrote a guidebook. And I'm saying all that to say that, I wasn't alone. These Negroes bought all the books. And this book is an interesting piece. I'm going to end with this one because there's a lot more. And I'm going to bring them all back. So we'll talk about this. Let me sense it. I got a couple here. Most of them I don't have in here. This is an interesting book I found. There's actually a U.S. It's called Rosalind and Mac Jansen wrote a book, Getting Old in Ancient Egypt. I want to spend some time with this book. I might pack this and put this on the plane and take it and read it while we fly back. Because when you get old in a society, how you treat the elders is the barometer of your society. It isn't, let's invest in the children. How you treating the elders? And we know how we treat our elders as the repositories they're supposed to be. We know how we've learned to mistreat our elders. So I'm going to read up on some more of that. But there are a couple of others. Hussein Basir has a new book, Living Forever, Self-Presentation in Ancient Egypt. Well, it's not new. It came out about 2 years ago. It's about 3 years ago now, but after COVID. This is interesting, this book on self-presentation in ancient Egypt, because we think about pharaohs. We spent a lot of time in this couple of weeks, almost 2 weeks now that we've been here, talking about people who weren't pharaohs. We understand we're fascinated with Tutankhamun, we're fascinated with Akhenaten, we're fascinated with Seti and Seti's mother who helped drive out the Hyksos. We saw her battle medals in the Luxor Museum, which is fascinating. The story I'll tell you another time. But what about folks who weren't royalty, who weren't the governors, who we have some testimony from, just the regular people who do the living? And then this book, which is a kind of coffee table book, it's a little off, a little esoteric for my taste, but I couldn't leave it in the bookstore. Sema Tawi. Sema Tawi, Tawi means the two lands. Sema Tawi is about the political formation that allows the people of the Nile Valley to create a society. Because what we're talking about in terms of Egypt is this incredible collective work. That's really what it is. It is a collective work. And so when you do something collectively, you can sustain over thousands of years, like ancient Egypt. I said there's a lot of images in there. Some of the stuff is kind of overly interpreted. One thing about study is you ain't got to guess if it's there. Obenga used to always say, never guess Medu Neter. You ain't got to say, I can guess. Now, you can be bold in your reading of it. In fact, when Angie finished the other night, Mario said who was the finest teacher of Egyptian language there is, and a lot of his students are here reading this stuff off the walls. Prof, this lady came up behind us, one of the sites we were at the other day, and asked one of the folks that's with us, you can read that? And this is it. Yeah, we can read some of it. And the lady was like, wow, this is a white woman. In other words, it's amazing to them, but you know, it's neither here nor there. But the point I was about to raise, this is what Mario said. You know, one of the reasons he likes the way that Angie reads the glyphs and makes interpretations, and this goes for Deborah Hurd, who said, I don't argue with these Egyptologists, I just do my work. I said, this need to be on a t-shirt. Deborah Hurd, I just do my work. Them 5 words. You know what I'm saying? This sister who is an archaeologist, you know. But I'm raising it to say this. He said, you don't have to guess, but once you grounded yourself in study, you can be bold in your interpretation. And that's important for us because our stories now have to be told by us, and they cannot be drawn from other people's imaginations, other people's renderings of us. We have to be bold enough. As Sheikh Anta Diop says, we have to be serene enough to accept the facts as they are. That's important because as Sheikh Anta Diop said about ancient Egypt, he said nobody would have looked with more horror at what happened to the disintegration of ancient Egypt and the idea that non-African people would be in control of African people. Sheikh Anta Diop said nobody would have looked on with more incredulity than the Egyptians because they had ruled for so long that they could never imagine that the situation could be reversed. The Egyptians could not have imagined the brawl in Montgomery because Black people would never be in that situation. The Egyptians would never, Martin Luther King, what the hell happened to us? Wait a minute, we're in chains? No, we put people in chains. This is the problem with Ramses. You know, Ramses rolls on his cousins in Nubia. You see it. You see them under his feet, along with a whole bunch of other people at Abu Simbel. It's some stuff we got to talk about in terms of Black on Black relations, even with those we respect. But my point is this: we would never have imagined there was a time when we would have been subjugated. The Egyptians could never have imagined that. And so, understanding that, we have to then return to this very important thing that Aikwe Armad talks about in his book, Net Shinsu. We have to understand that we can read, we can study, we can have conversation with our ancestors without interpreters, to quote Jacob Carruthers. And when we do that, we can recover the momentum of memory that will allow us not to have, we're not talking about, if you want to do a 1619 project, I'm 100% in favor of it. 1619 BC project. Let's do a 1619 project and put a BC in front of it. See, because this 1619 AD, yeah, I'm for fighting, I'm for pushing back, but you didn't, no. Let's go back, 1619 BC. I'm right there. New Kingdom, we can start there. Say I'm gonna stop with that.
Let's do this. I'm completely in support and help facilitate that. You just, oh my goodness. You're giving me so much work to do, and that time piece that I was like, when will we have the time? But we're gonna have to create it. And people who have opinions, please make sure your opinions are rooted in actual knowledge. You don't. I feel like we should check people if they don't have the knowledge to say things.
No question.
To be quiet. Somebody shared in not the Nubia chat, but in the narrative chat on YouTube that Minister Clemson Brown has made transition, and they wanted to tell you that.
Yes, in fact, thank you, thank you, Karen, because oh my God, thank you. That's a perfect way for us to end. Let me pause here, just to be quiet for a moment, because we will pour libation for Clemson Brown. Last night, Baba Sweets, he and his wife are here. They celebrated their first year anniversary. They got married in Kemet a year ago this week. They had a cake. It was very nice. Baba Sweets, who was a Brooklyn boy, who was regaling us with stories of going to Tree of Life. And I said, well, you know, Dr. Amin, that's her people's shop. What? Yeah, so tree of life. So Sunyata, your people, she growing up in there making the herbs, mixing the herbs, and then with the stuff on her fingers, you know, as she tells the story. Baba Sweets, as we got ready to do our nightly convening and reflection and lecture last night, Baba Sweets came up and said, "Hey man, I don't know if you heard, I just got word from the state that Clemson Brown passed." I said, "Damn, Clemson Brown." Minister Clemson Brown was the reason why you go on YouTube, anything you see with Atlantic Productions, Clemson Brown recorded. I really don't know if there's an accounting of everything he recorded. Clemson Brown was never without his video camera. Most of what we have, I won't say most, much of what we have, particularly, I won't say not just the New York area, but if you're talking about the United African Movement, Automatics, all that's Clemson Brown. The recording. You see Jack Carruthers get one of the most powerful discussions of truth. It's called Truth and Falsehood. You go on YouTube, you'll see it. Clemson Brown. Clemson Brown, for years, would come to the ASCAC meetings, and he and I would talk. And he would be like, "I got all these VHS tapes. I don't have hundreds, I have thousands. I'm not exaggerating." Clemson Brown, if anything he went to, he had his camera, and he went to every Amos Wilson, Marimba Ani, you name Naeem Akbar, Asa Hick, you name it. There are other people, Paul Gibson in the Philly area, Timbuktu, people, Philly and Jersey, and there are people all over the Sylvester Rivers out there in the West Coast. I can start naming these cats. All you black academics who come in Nubia and watch, I want y'all to listen very closely as I whisper into your ear. You can pray that you can write an academic article or maybe even a book on this kind of stuff for your master. And you will never, ever get close to what you could do if you put your master's opinion out of your head and work for your people. But I ain't invested no time in you. I just want to say that as a commercial announcement to all the Negroes who think that white academia somehow is going to save us. It's not. Clemson Brown was a recorder of our people. And he labored in governance formations where we all loved, knew, and respected him. He was ill for a while. He recovered for a while. But he is virtually unknown in his social structure. Ken Burns, I don't know who that is. I know Minister Clemson Brown, and Sweets told us last night, so we raised his voice as we had our meeting. We paused for a moment and sent out the ashe, and we're going to pour a libation to Minister Clemson Brown, and we'll talk more about him when we get back. And yeah, thank you for letting the world know, folk in the line on the Nubia channel. And y'all tell people to subscribe to that Nubia channel, by the way. Yeah, Clemson Brown, Asheo, yes.
I purposefully hadn't been a crusader to get people to subscribe to Narrative, to be a part of Nubia, primarily because of what you talked about with the broken obelisk.
Yes.
The work that is required, that we need from one another, I think we haven't been doing. Like you said, the Montgomery bus boycott couldn't happen today, and that's a failure on our part to not have the momentum of memory to build upon something that could free all of us, right? So I can imagine, a flooding in of people who aren't ready to do the work, just running around like the last scene of They clone Tyrone.
Yes.
And to have to wrangle that, somebody that is literally, in this space every day, checking it, like, I ain't got the time. And I don't think many people are equipped. So I've been very on purpose, not saying come and join. And this, it's like here and there. If you hear it, you hear it, you'll come. The call will pull you. But
no, that's a good point. And thank you for that corrective. I mean, and I take that as a corrective because it's necessary correction. I just be wanting everybody, like, hold on, let's just. And so I love and appreciate you for that as well. Because that's important. Discipline, you have standing at Set My Eye. Everybody who lived there, those women and men that lived there, they had to know meta nature. They were architects. They were people who tested stone, strength of stone. Your skills have to be at the top of your game. And guess what? All of us can reach the top of our game. We can in the conjuring of young brother Sankara. We can be gods metaphorically.
If your 4-year-old and a little child shall lead us,
and
that's not to say, Dr. Carter, everybody has to come with skills, but then you sit in it. You sit in it and sit. If you come in there are 100 now. There'll be 179 in class with Carrs. There are 100 meta-netra classes. There are,
right.
you know, there's so many things that you can sit with. A lot of you should knows. Get your skills up, you know, come in with the notion to get your skills up so that you can help build, right? And then but you know, in Nubia, you know, we engage, but you know, it's not just a spewing. It's not a place of spewing, which is what we've been conditioned to do over the last 20 years through social media, right? Just spew, just come in and just spew. Everybody's got an opinion. I'm gonna talk about this. I'm gonna just spew. No, this is building. We have to build something, and we're building it for a time when we won't be here, right? That's the vision.
That's right. That's right.
So
that's right.
Yeah, it requires something.
Right. That's right. In fact, I'm glad you said that, because here we are, the 50th anniversary of hip hop. One of the great articulations of don't jump in the middle of this if you're not ready to work. Of course, the great KRS-One, build your skills, no question. Some rappers talk ish, and too many don't. They take it too lightly. Build your skills. So yeah, the Goodlett family. You know, St. Carr's mother and father are here, and they've been there on our bus as well. I mean, when you, in fact, it's so funny. Mario, we were at lunch somewhere we were out, and he asked St. Carr a question. He said something. He said, "Where did you learn so much? When did you get so smart?" And he said something like, "Well, I learned from my parents, and I learned to be excellent like every Black child." I mean, he said, Mario, just stop. He said, "What, boy?" In other words, this young man said, I'm exceptional, and I'm not alone. We're all the children are exceptional. That sounds like Mariba Kelsey. Mariba Kelsey once made a mantra that he had young people repeat, including all his children. I am a genius. My ancestors were geniuses. I must do genius. I mean, this is the educated. All of us, you know, yes. I am a genius. Oh, anyway.
Well, thank you. I'm gonna leave us with this. We'll see you hopefully in office hours. I know Michael Harris.
Office hours.
Michael, I'm gonna get with you. We're gonna do a screening because his Drapetomania, his podcast is fire, and so we're gonna do a listening party or listening experience in Nubia with him.
Oh, that's wonderful. So we've been talking about that too.
Yeah,
you gotta do that. Yeah, gotta do that. I understand, Mike, that you're gonna be at the Apollo. Oh yeah, and of course your wife said, you know, let's make sure that the Nubians know wherever he's going to be on the book tour. I said, you know, you ain't got to worry about that. That's what we do.
That's all. I got you. I got you.
Less. You know, Karen got you.
I got you. All right. Well, be safe on your way back. Hug everybody for me. Send out love, and you know, I'm feeling some ways about not being there, but yes,
it's here.
I'm there.
This is the prep. This is the prep.